My name is Emily at 34. My hands tell a story that my face tries to hide. They are hands that have been scrubbed raw with antiseptic, hands that have held the weight of a dying man's last hope, and hands that have been steady when the world around me was collapsing. I am a nurse. To some, that is a title of honor. To my family, it was a badge of mediocrity. I grew up in a house that felt like a museum, beautiful, expensive, and cold. After my father passed away when I was 10, my mother remarried a man named Richard, a tycoon with a daughter named Lily. From the moment we moved in, I was the other girl. Lily was a year younger, a whirlwind of blonde hair, designer labels, and an insatiable need for the spotlight, while Lily was being driven to private ballet lessons in a black sedan. I was taking the bus to the library to study biology, while she spent her summers at elite camps in Switzerland. I was working at a local clinic, cleaning floors just to be near the medicine I loved. Why do you want to be a nurse, Emily? Lily would sneer, looking at my thrift store jeans. It's so messy. You're basically a high-paid maid in blue pajamas. I never argued. I didn't have the energy. I knew what it felt like to see a patient take their first breath after surgery. I knew the sacred silence of a hospital at 3 a.m. That was my world. Lily's world was built on mirrors and smoke, on who was looking at her and how much her outfit cost. For 12 years, I worked the graveyard shift at St. Mary's Memorial. It is a trauma center, the kind of place where the useless people Lily talked about worked miracles every hour. Being a nurse means you are invisible until you are vital. You are the one who notices the slight change in a heart rhythm that the machines miss. You are the one who comforts the mother who just lost her son. You carry the trauma of 100 lives in your own heart, and then you go home, wash the smell of iodine off your skin, and try to sleep before the next shift. Lily never understood that. To her, my exhaustion was a sign of failure. If I couldn't afford a $5,000 handbag, it meant I hadn't made it. When she announced her engagement to Mark Harrison, the son of one of the wealthiest men in the country, she looked at me as if she had finally won a race I wasn't even running. The wedding is at the Grand Plaza, she told me, her eyes gleaming with a predatory sort of joy. Try to wear something that doesn't look like you found it in a hospital basement. Emily, Mark's family is very distinguished. I don't want to be embarrassed. 3 years ago, before the wedding, before the fame, there was a night that changed me. It was a Tuesday in October. A massive autumn storm had turned the city into a chaotic mess of flooded streets and down power lines. To make matters worse, a massive protest had broken out downtown, blocking the main arteries to the hospital. I was the lead nurse on duty in the we were understaffed. Half the surgical team was stuck on the highway. Then the sirens started. Multiple vehicle pileup on the I-95. The radio barked. Minutes later, the doors swung open. A man was wheeled in, barely recognizable under the blood and the twisted metal of his clothes. His vitals were crashing. His chest was crushed, and he was slipping into hypovolemic shock. Where's the attending surgeon? I shouted, stuck at the protest site. A paramedic replied, he's at least an hour away. I looked at the man on the gurney. He was older, with silver hair and a face that looked like it belonged on a corporate billboard. But in that moment, he was just a dying human being. For the next 6 hours, I didn't leave his side. I manually bagged his breathing when the ventilator flickered. I managed his internal bleeding with the few supplies we had. When his heart stopped, I was the one who climbed onto the gurney to perform compressions, refusing to let him go. I whispered to him the whole time, stay with me, sir. Your family is coming. Don't look at the light. Look at me. Stay with me. By the time the surgeons arrived, he was stable. I disappeared into the locker room, threw up from the sheer adrenaline and exhaustion, and went home. I never even learned his name. In a trauma center, names are less important than numbers. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels. The Grand Plaza Ballroom was a cathedral of excess. Gold-leafed pillars, thousands of white roses, and a guest list that looked like a who's who of the elite. I wore a simple navy blue dress I'd bought on sale. It was modest and clean. I sat at the end of a long table, tucked away behind a large floral arrangement. I watched Lily. She was beautiful, yes, but it was a cold beauty. She moved through the room like a queen surveying her subjects. Mark, her groom, seemed like a good man, quiet, perhaps a bit overwhelmed by Lily's intensity. And then there was Mark's father, Arthur Harrison. I recognized him from the newspapers. He was a titan of industry. He sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding the entire room. But as I sat there, I noticed him looking at me, not with the disdain Lily usually showed, but with a strange, piercing curiosity. Every time I looked up, his eyes were on me, narrowing as if he were trying to solve a difficult puzzle. The dinner was served lobster, fine wine, and laughter that sounded like breaking glass. Then Lily stood up. She tapped her glass, and the room went silent. "I want to thank everyone for coming," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "But I want to take a special moment to introduce someone who is very different from the rest of us. My stepsister, Emily." The spotlight of 500 eyes shifted to me. I felt my throat tighten. Lily laughed, a high, tinkling sound. I asked Emily what she was bringing as a wedding gift, and she said she couldn't afford much because she's just a nurse. Can you imagine? Living your whole life surrounded by sick people and making pennies. A few people at the table laughed. Lily leaned in, her voice amplified by the microphone. "She's the useless one in the family. While I was traveling the world, she was cleaning bedpans. But I suppose every family needs a commoner to make the rest of us look better, right?" The humiliation was a physical weight. I sat there, my face burning, but I didn't lower my head. I simply looked at her. I saw the hollowness in her eyes. I smiled, a small, sad smile for her, not for me. The laughter died down, but the air remained thick with the stench of Lily's cruelty. That's when Arthur Harrison stood up. He didn't look at Lily. He didn't look at his son. He walked slowly around the table until he was standing directly behind me. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Lily," Arthur said, his voice like rolling thunder. "You say she's just a nurse." Lily nodded, a confused smile on her face. "Yes, Arthur. She's quite boring." "Really?" Arthur turned to me. His eyes were wet. His hands were shaking. 3 years ago, he said, his voice trembling with an emotion I couldn't identify. "I was in an accident. The doctor told me later that I should have died in that. The roads were blocked. The surgeons couldn't get through." He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I remember a voice. It was a woman's voice. She told me not to look at the light. She told me my son was waiting for me. I couldn't see her face because of the blood, but I remember her eyes. They were the color of the sea during a storm. He looked at my eyes. "The same color as yours?" Arthur turned back to the crowd. He grabbed a glass of champagne from the table, but he didn't drink it. He held it up like a weapon. "This woman," Arthur shouted, pointing at me, "is the reason I am alive. She didn't leave my side for 6 hours. She fought for my life when everyone else said it was a lost cause. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know I had money. To her, I was just a human being who needed help." He looked at Lily, and his expression turned to pure, unadulterated disgust. "You call her useless? You, who have never worked a day in your life? You, who spend your father's money on shoes while this woman spends her soul saving strangers?" He turned to his son, "Mark, son, you are marrying into this family. But make no mistake, the person with the most value in this room is sitting right here in a navy blue dress." Mark stood up. He looked at his father, then at me, then at Lily. The look he gave Lily was one of sudden realization. He saw her clearly for the first time. The wedding reception didn't recover. Arthur Harrison walked me out of the room himself, his arm around my shoulder. Lily was left standing at the microphone, a silent, pale ghost of the woman she thought she was. The important people she had tried so hard to impress were now whispering, looking at her with judgment. In the lobby of the hotel, Arthur stopped me. "Emily," he said, "I want to set up a foundation, a nursing scholarship in your name." I want to make sure that every useless nurse in this city has the resources they need to keep doing what you do. I started to cry then. Not because of the money, and not because I had one. I cried because, for the first time in my life, someone had seen the invisible work. Someone had realized that the quiet truth is louder than any lie. A month later, I heard that Lily and Mark's marriage was annulled. Mark couldn't get over the cruelty she had displayed. Lily moved away, unable to face the social circles that now saw her as a shallow bully. As for me, I went back to work. I walked into the hospital at 7 p.m. for my shift. I put on my blue scrubs. I tied my hair back. I checked the vitals of a woman in room 300 who was recovering from a stroke. She looked up at me and smiled. "Thank you, nurse," she whispered. I smiled back, holding her hand. "It's my job," I said. And I love it, because at the end of the day, I am not just a nurse. I am the line between life and death, and there is nothing more useful in this world than that.